Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about episode 1 of the brand new Netflix original anime series, which is titled Blue-Eyed Samurai or Blue-Eye Samurai, and episode 1 was actually titled Hammerscale. And so we're going to talk about the episode and break it down almost scene by scene. I mean, we probably won't put every single scene in there, but we will break down the episode and talk about it as a whole. So yeah, let's just go right ahead and jump into it. So essentially, the episode opens with, of course, the Blue Eye Samurai. Now, I actually went to IMDb to look at the cast because I don't think they actually mention the Blue Eyed Samurai's. I don't think they actually mention her name in this episode, but according to the IMDb cast list, I believe the Blue Eyed Samurai's name is Mitsu, or Mizu, I believe is how you pronounce her name. And so the episode opens with her walking in her really cool blue attire. She looks really cool, and she got the cool samurai hat. And also, I think it's worth mentioning as well that this takes place back in the 1600s. I think they said it was 1677 or something like that. But while she's walking along here, there's other words and stuff that are popping up as well. Words such as like monster and all this type of stuff. So we don't really know why or what's going on here yet. We just know that there's something obviously very peculiar about this character, and he is a very cool, calm, and collect, but you can tell that they're very well trained, very disciplined, and definitely knows the way of the samurai. So as Mitsu, or the Blue-Eyed Samurai, is going along his travels, he ends up coming to this tavern. And of course, this tavern has this other older gentleman that's there, and he's sort of being really mean to these two girls that are here in the tavern with him. And, he has this gun, which I guess, and as you can tell as well, with it being back in the 1600s, you can tell that the gun is very old school. It's something that probably goes by gunpowder. You'd probably have to reload it in order to shoot it again. It's something that requires a lot of attention, a lot of maintenance, a lot of cleaning. It's a very old antique type gun, but anyways, this older gentleman ends up pulling the gun on the Blue-Eyed Samurai, and basically because the samurai basically intervenes because the samurai is not happy with how he's treating the girls. He's very disrespectful and very mean and very very evil to these young girls, which I actually really liked. I really liked the fact that they played into that, because there's another scene later on as well, which we'll talk about, where that sort of thing happens, again, where there, well, we'll get to that when we get there, but there is another scene where you can sort of see how the Japanese women really did not have much, too many rights or really all that much freedom or whatnot back in this time or back in this era. And so I really liked how they played into that. I really liked how they didn't shy away from that. They really showed it what it was. Now, right from the very beginning, I will say, right from the very first scene, I kind of figured that this samurai was going to end up being a girl, just because of how high pitched the voice was. They kept calling him boy and man and stuff in this first episode as it was going on, but it was pretty clear and pretty obvious to me that this was not a man, it was a woman. And of course, by the time we get to the end of this episode, it is revealed that this person is a woman. So anyways, so the samurai has a huge confrontation with this gentleman. It's very bloody, very gory. This show does not hold back. This is an adult rated R series. There is nudity, there is blood, there is gore, so keep that in mind if you're watching it. Don't watch this anime around children, but that's a part of what makes anime so great, is that you do have to have that blood and gore, and sometimes even a little bit of nudity. You don't really have to have the nudity, but I always appreciate it when they don't shy away from it, as long as it's used in a way that actually suits the story. And in this case, it does suit the story. So anyways, the samurai ends up carrying on now, and along his travels, he ends up meeting this friend, this guy. I can't remember what this gentleman's name is, but according to the IMDb, I'm not 100% sure if his name is, if he's going to end up being Ringo or Seki or Seka, or no, actually, I think he is Ringo, now that I'm thinking about it. I think this character's name is Ringo. But anyways, he ends up following the samurai, and he's kind of like, telling the samurai, telling Mitsu that he wants to, tag along, that he's okay with calling her master. He wants her to train him. Now, at this point, like I said, they're still calling Mitsu a man and a boy. It hasn't technically been revealed yet that he is actually a she, but like I said, it was very obvious right from the very get-go. But it was really funny to see their interactions and their relationship, especially with how their relationship ends up going by the end of this episode. I thought it was really funny. Ringo, assuming this is Ringo, like I said, I don't recall them ever actually using names in this first episode, but I'm just going by the cast list. But Ringo is very funny. This character is hilarious, and he really wants to join the samurai, and the samurai's like, nope, not happening. So the samurai ends up tying him to a tree, which I just thought was absolutely hilarious. Now, we end up going back then and getting our very first real, true flashback, and we learn that Mitsu, as a child, or Mizu, or Mizu ends up, Mitsu ends up, or maybe it's pronounced Miyu. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce it, but I'm going to call it Mitsu or Miyu, and you can tell that this child was very much bullied, and they do sort of give you a little bit of hints as to why. You learn in this scene that she's actually an orphan, so obviously her parents are no longer alive, or at least she's not living with them, and so we don't really know what happened yet, because we haven't got that much backstory. This is pretty early on into the episode, and plus this is only the first episode of the series, so we don't really have a whole lot of backstory yet. We just know that Mizu or Miyu is actually an orphan right now. So we don't really know why, but we just know that she was bullied, which actually is also sort of makes sense when you go back to the first image that we showed at the very beginning of the episode, when she's on her journey, walking in her attire. The words are coming up, monster, and that kind of stuff. So so right from the very get-go, she's been bullied, and she is an orphan. So then we come to the next scene, which is still in the flashback, which I thought was a very peculiar scene, because it shows like a blue asteroid which sort of lands and crashes into the Earth, and on this asteroid there's this sort of element, or there's a new element or a new type of mineral or metal that sort of lands here on this asteroid. And so Mitsu and her adopted father, I guess you would say, who's actually blind, sort of her, what she actually calls him, sword father, I believe she calls him. They end up taking this meteorite back home with them, because Sword Father is actually a swordsman. He's a blacksmith, and he creates weapons, and so they're going to try to utilize this new mineral, this new form of metal, to create a sword, because it would probably be a lot stronger than anything that we have on Earth. And so that was really cool. It's just really nice to see their relationship and whatnot. So then we go back to the present day now, and this is the scene that I was talking about earlier, how they do a really good job at leaning into the fact that the Japanese women never really had any rights back in these days of the samurai, and this woman ends up getting refused because she doesn't have her husband with him. And I actually thought that this might have been a point in time when the samurai might have actually jumped in, because the samurai does have a good heart. She seems to tack up for the underdog. Seems like she doesn't like bullies or anything like that. So I was wondering if she might not have attacked the guards, but I think in terms of politics and whatnot, she still tries to sort of stay out of trouble. And given the fact that this guy was probably military or some form of more of a political authority, as opposed to just some person off the streets, I think this could have been why she sort of held back and didn't do anything. But that doesn't mean that something like this won't happen again in the future. That doesn't mean that she won't confront this person in the future or whatnot. I'm not really sure. Maybe it was just them simply showing that the Japanese women did not have any rights back then. But either way, I really loved that scene. It was a little bit hard to watch, because your heart, you really feel for the Japanese woman here, because she really needs to get through, but this guard will not let her. I also think it's worth mentioning as well. The animation in this movie is really, really good. It looks really good. It's very clean, very crisp, and you know, and the way they speak and everything is it looks really well. It's very crisp, very clean, and the writing is very well too. So then finally, the samurai ends up getting into town, getting past the guard, and she ends up finding these three people that have these symbol on their you know, they sort of have like a dojo crest or some form of you know, emblem on their suits. And so Miyu or Mitsu ends up asking them, you know, hey, can you point me to the right direction of the dojo? And of course they do. They tell her that it's, you know, at first they don't at first. They sort of, you know, no, they're sort of conflicted by the fact that, you know, they don't know the person, and they probably think that they're better trained than she is, even though we learn very quickly when she actually gets to the dojo that she's pretty well able to take them all on all at the same time. But anyways, they tell her to go and look for, you know, the dojo is up next to, you know, a puppet type thing. Like there's someone that's doing like a puppet show or whatnot. And so of course she ends up going there and she finds the puppet show, and they end up telling her, or they end up leading her to a brothel. Now this is once again where she ends up meeting up with the character that I think is called Ringo. And so while she's here at this brothel, she sort of, this is a really funny moment, and this is why Ringo has a really funny moment, especially at the very end of the episode. But she asks them, you know, how much would it cost for you to take Ringo in, and basically, you know, so that she could get away to distract him. And so they actually end up taking him in, and it's just an absolutely hilarious scene. You know, I can't show it here on YouTube, but of course it is a brothel, and there are two naked Japanese women in front of him, and they're and they're like, you know, talking about their bodies and whatnot, and he and he's just like peaches. He just says something called, he says the word peaches, which they come back to later on. But it was so funny to see that, and his expression. He's definitely the heart of the show, and he's really has a lot of comedy. Also, he has no hands as well, which makes me think he must have, you know, lost his hands either in battle, or maybe he got caught stealing or something like that. So I do hope that eventually they show the backstory of Ringo, and I do think that they will. We just haven't learned it yet in this episode. But either way, he was definitely the heart of this episode. Excuse me. He was absolutely hilarious, and I really enjoyed seeing him, and his character was just so funny and so fun to watch as well. So then we carry on, and then we're introduced to these two characters, which are brand new characters. We don't really know who they are at this moment in time, but all we know is that this is a father and a daughter, and their relationship is a little rocky at best. You know, he sort of wants her to marry, you know, and given that old tradition, you know, of the way it was back then, he's technically supposed to choose who she marries and whatnot, and of course she's very picky over who it is. You know, she doesn't really want to just marry anybody. She wants to, you know, she's very specific, and she sort of manipulates her father a little bit by saying, you know, well, I only want, you know, I want to live close to you. I don't want someone that's, you know, sort of rich or anything. I want someone who sort of grew up in sort of like a slummy, not slummy, but in a very, you know, unformal, very non-formal life. You know, he grew up as a farmer, had to deal with pigs and whatnot, but, you know, I guess her father was already rich and whatnot, and already very recognized with his own dojo by the time that she comes around, because he sort of implies that, you know, in their conversation, he's like, you know, you don't really know what it's like to grow up poor, so, you know, you've only ever had everything. And so she sort of manipulates him in a way of accepting someone that she already, it seems like she already knows who she wants, but she's afraid that the father won't accept it, so she sort of manipulates him into accepting the person that she, you know, you can tell she already knows who she wants, and that other person I think already wants her as well, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, they do reveal that in the story, in this episode, when they go and exchange gifts. He gives her like some kind of, you know, you could tell it's a very poor type gift, and she gives him gold because she's in this rich formal life, but her father was not always like that, so it was really cool to see that as well. And they're really playing into the Japanese culture, which I thought was really appropriate for this type of anime. And so then we go back to the samurai, and now later on you end up learning that the father and daughter and the person that she ends up being with are people and members of this dojo. And so she gets here and she comes in. They finally let her in. It takes Miyu or Mitsu some time to actually convince them to let her in, because she tells this dojo that she needs to speak to the master and that she has a personal message that she can only deliver personally. She has to see him. She has to go there and actually deliver it. And of course, this causes a little bit of conflict, but eventually, she sort of gets through to him to some degree, but they never truly actually allows her to go and see the master and whatnot. So then we end up getting another flashback, and I really like this flashback because it shows Seki. I think his name is Seki, who's the blind man, and it shows him teaching her to become a blacksmith, so she knows how to wield weapons, she knows how to make weapons, and obviously she knows how to use weapons too, which we already know from her little fight and her little brawl back at the bar. And so then we still in a flashback, but this time when she's a little bit older, then they show her actually using the weapons, and she's actually training, and this is the first time that Seki sort of figures out what she's doing, and he catches her training and tells her that it's okay and that she can train by the night. And this is also then when we get the backstory about what really happened to her mother, and we learn that her mother, they call them white demons, which is simply the white man. So it seems like her mother was potentially raped by a few white male figures, and of course, which means that Mitsu, or the blue-eyed samurai, comes from her mom being raped by the white man. And so to some degree, I guess you can say, if you were to compare this to something like Game of Thrones, this would basically make her like a bastard child. She's, in the eyes of the Japanese people, she's an illegitimate child, which is why at the beginning of the episode, the words are coming up that she's a monster, she's a fraud, she can't be taken serious, and that no man would ever look at her and whatnot. But this is why, because she's frowned upon, because she is a mixed race. She's not full Japanese, and that's a big deal for these people during this time. And so that's basically why she was referred to as a monster. So then they go back to the present day, and now the dojo has basically getting sick and tired of her still being there and not leaving, and still being consistent about delivering the message to the master. And so they end up basically end up attacking her and fighting her. And of course, we know that she is an absolute boss. They don't stand a chance. She literally destroys them all. Now, at first, she's really only fighting like apprentices, pupils, and students, which are really not that powerful. They're not like the master. They're not like her. She gets through them very easily, breaking their teeth, their bones, very bloody, very gory, and whatnot. And then, so as the fight escalates, then they end up going and getting this other dude, or this other, still not the master, but still someone who's a lot higher than the pupils or the students, and she ends up fighting him, and this time he gives her a little bit of trouble. She's not able to just straight up beat him, and he actually gives her a good run for her money. And so the fight continues, and they end up taking the fight outside. And when she gets outside, we learn that she is actually fighting, the blue-eyed samurai is actually fighting with all of her weights still on, which is how she used to train as a child as well. So once she takes the weights off, which is something that used to happen a lot in Dragon Ball Z as well. If you ever watched that anime, Goku used to oftentimes train with weights. Not just Goku, but Gohan, Vegeta, all those characters. And so in this series, in this episode, Miyu or Mitsu has been fighting the whole time with weights on. So when she takes off her weights, she's basically light as a feather, and she destroys this guy easy peasy. But she doesn't kill him. She shows him mercy. She lets him live, and she just cuts off sort of like the long hair on the top of his head, which was actually really funny. So he ends up with a really big bald spot, and he doesn't like that. And I'm guessing it's probably something to do with the Japanese culture. That's probably a big deal. It's probably a part of his training and whatnot. So, but I just thought it was really funny that she ended up doing that. And so once he ends up losing this battle, then this dojo ends up sending out these 4 warriors, which I would assume are very highly decorated and very highly trained assassins or something like that, to go after Mitsu and to go and chase down the blue-eyed samurai. And they actually called these 4 assassins names the four fangs. And that's pretty well all of how episode 1 ends in terms of the action and the story. Of course, we get one more flashback then, of course, with Mitsu or Miyu as she is leaving Saki, or the blinded sword father that she calls him, and she's getting ready to embark on this adventure, which I assume is what we're watching now in the present day. And he tells her to take a sword, and she says, "I already have one," which is, of course, a sword that she was finally able to make out of that mineral, out of that new element from the meteorite or whatnot. So she was the only one that was actually able to use it, manipulate it, and melt it. He was not able to do this, even though he tried. He wasn't able to, and that is, and so it was really cool to see now that her weapon is a very special type of weapon from a very special type of steel. And then the very last scene, which is, really when they confirmed that she was a woman, which I knew the whole time. I mean, like I said, because of her voice, I just knew she was a woman the whole time. I got it blurred out there, but they do show it when you actually watch it. Like I said, this show does have a lot of nudity and stuff, but they end up revealing that she's the woman. Once again, it's the guy that was following her, Ringo, and he looks at her and he says, "Peaches," because she's naked, and that's what he was saying about the women at the brothel. And it was just a really funny callback, and Ringo is definitely the star of the show, and I can't wait to see more of Ringo, and I hope he sticks around and actually stays with Miyu or Mitsu and really becomes a full-time character, because I think he'll be the heart, and I think that he might even be able to teach her some lessons, and she might be able to teach him some lessons, and I think I think their dynamic would be really good together, because I've already loved their dynamic on screen. They're very funny, and so I look forward to seeing where the story goes next. And so with that being said, that is episode 1 of Blue Eye Samurai. Overall, I absolutely loved the episode. Excuse me. I thought the story was done really well. The animation is phenomenal. The action is phenomenal. But also the story itself. They really go deep into Miyu, and they're really showing a lot of her history as well as the present day. So the way they're developing this samurai, they're doing a great job with it, and whatnot. So Netflix is really killing it here with this one, and I look forward to seeing the whole series. Like I said, the writing was excellent, the action was excellent, the choreography was excellent. The writing, the animation itself looks beautiful, and it is a very hard rated R adult anime, and so I can appreciate that. And like I said, I can't wait to see where it goes next. And that's pretty well all I got. So that's my review for episode 1 of Blue Eyed Samurai. We will review each episode of the entire series, then we'll review the series as a whole, and we'll actually do a podcast of the whole series and whatnot. And that's pretty well all I got. So let me know in the comment section below if you've seen this episode of Blue Eye Samurai, and if you like it, tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click that subscribe button. If you want to help the channel grow for a second time, like, share, comment, all that good stuff, and help the algorithm. And that's pretty well all I got. So until the next video.